What's up, everyone? Let's get straight into it. Today we are talking about something that is not just interesting, it's absolutely infuriating, and it's getting hotter by the minute. America. Yeah, the same America that usually walks around with its nose in the air, acting like it's too good to talk to anyone, that America has now gone crawling to mainland China on its hands and knees, begging them to go easy on Japan and restart rare earth exports. But let me tell you something, the more desperate they get, the less we should give in. Why? I'm about to break this down for you from every single angle. No shortcuts, no fluff. You're going to understand exactly what's happening behind the curtain. Recently, Japan's rare earth stockpiles have been draining faster than a bathtub with the plug pulled. Their so-called world-class high-end military industries and cutting-edge manufacturing have fallen into a crisis that is nothing short of severe. In plain English, they are grinding to a halt. Their engines are sputtering. And right at this moment, this exact moment, the United States of America stepped up publicly. The US government said out loud that it hopes mainland China will cut Japan some slack and restart rare earth exports. Now, here's what you need to remember. Ever since mainland China tightened its grip on rare earth export controls, the amount of specific rare earth elements going to Japan has absolutely collapsed. This isn't a small dip, this isn't a minor adjustment, this is a cliff dive, a vertical drop. This has directly caused a paralysis crisis in many of Japan's core industrial chains. In simple terms, their lifeline has been cut, their breathing tube has been squeezed shut. And the US, seeing its forward deployed frontline ally in the Asia Pacific, about to flatline, suddenly jumped in to play mediator. On the surface, it looks like the US is backing up its little buddy. But let's be honest, there's an old saying, no profit, no action behind all this drama, behind all this so-called friendship. The US is really looking out for itself. Always has been, always will be. So today, let's break down three big questions. And I mean really break them down. Number one, why did the United States, usually so arrogant, so full of itself, so quick to sanction and bully, why did it suddenly lower its guard, swallow its pride, and go beg for Japan? Number two, what exactly is Japan trying to do with all this desperate resource grabbing? What's their real goal behind the scenes? Number three, what cards does mainland China actually have to fight back against this US-Japan tag team? And why is China able to sit back and laugh while they both squirm? Let's start with the first one. When you see this story, your first reaction is probably confusion. You think the US is usually so aggressive. Sanctions here. Sanctions there, regime change over there. So why are they suddenly playing the nice guy? Why are they the ones asking for favors? Here's the truth. In the game between nations, the real game, not the one they show on TV, it always comes down to two words. Interests, pure, naked, selfish interests, no interests. The US wouldn't even look your way. They wouldn't return your phone call. They wouldn't wipe their shoes on your welcome mat. A while back, Japan's Nikkei newspaper, a pretty credible outlet, leaked a story. They said the Trump administration was pushing mainland China to restart rare earth exports. And what was the excuse? The excuse was to stabilize global supply chains. Sounds fancy, right? Sounds responsible. Let me tell you something, that's garbage. Let's take a magnifying glass to their source. What did Nikkei cite? Anonymous diplomatic sources. Think about that. The United States of America is the loudest country on planet Earth. If they have something legit to say, they hold a press conference, they put out a long statement, they blast it on every news channel. But anonymous leaks, that tells you one thing, this is a test. And not a confident test, a nervous one. They're sneaking around. They're whispering, they're nervous and guilty. Why? Because they know they don't have a leg to stand on. So why is the US forcing itself to take this job? Why are they the ones carrying water for Japan? Here's the ugly truth. America's strategy in the Asia Pacific, and I want you to really hear this, is to avoid being the first one in the line of fire. We don't want a direct confrontation with mainland China. We don't want that smoke. Instead, we want Japan, South Korea, and other little brothers to be the shields. The cannon fodder, the ones who take the hit while we sit back and watch. But here's the problem. Japan's defense ministry has been pushing high-performance radar systems and stealth materials that are extremely, critically, lethally dependent on mainland China's heavy rare earths. How dependent? Let me put it this way. Without those materials, their advanced weapons are not advanced. They are scrap metal. They are paperweights. They are expensive museum pieces. That's the real reason everyone is panicking. I went and checked the numbers myself. I did the homework. And here's a really ironic, laughable fact. The United States has its own Mountain Pass rare earth mine. It's the biggest rare earth mine in the so-called free world. We should be proud, right? Except here's the punchline. The raw ore we dig up at Mountain Pass, it still has to be loaded onto ships and sent all the way to mainland China for refining and separation. Why? Because the United States does not have the large-scale environmental technology or the production lines to process heavy rare earths. We can't even handle our own ore without China. We export our dirt to them. They send back the good stuff, and now we want to play peacemaker for Japan. That is like a mud statue trying to cross a river. It's going to dissolve before it gets to the other side. We can barely save ourselves, let alone someone else, and here's the part that'll make you laugh out loud. While pretending to be Japan's best friend, has absolutely no problem ripping Japan off at the same time. Look at the latest headlines. The US is pressuring Japan to invest $555 billion. That's $555 billion with a B into the United States. That is not small change. That is not a friendly suggestion. That is a shakedown. This is basically a way to hollow out Japan's high-end industrial base. We are moving their factories, their technology, their jobs to America. So on one hand, we're gutting Japan. On the other hand, we come crying to mainland China saying, oh, please, give him some raw materials. He's about to stop working. Can you hear that? I can hear that cash register ringing all the way from Washington to Tokyo to Beijing. Now let's look back at how the US treats mainland China, because this is where the hypocrisy really stinks. Just recently, the United States added another big batch of mainland Chinese companies to its so-called entity list. That's a blacklist. That's a chokehold, restrictions everywhere, supply chain blockages everywhere, technology bans everywhere. So let's put the logic together very slowly. You trip mainland China at every turn. You choke their companies, you ban their tech, and then you expect mainland China to hand over its most critical, most strategic, most irreplaceable resources to your little buddy. There is no such deal in the real world. If that is not the definition of double standards, then the word has no meaning. Modern industry is about complete supply chains, not partial, not fragmented. Complete Japan right now is a classic example of being unbalanced. Severely, dangerously unbalanced. They are strong in some areas like precision manufacturing and certain types of chemicals. But when a real storm hits, when a major power decides to turn the screws, their lack of resilience is exposed for the whole world to see. Ever since mainland China tightened its export compliance rules on certain strategic items for security reasons, legitimate security reasons, exports of specific rare earth elements from mainland China to Japan have dropped by more than 80% year over year. 80%. Let me make that visual for you. Out of 10 containers, 2 are left. 8 are gone. That's not a reduction. That's an amputation, elements like neodymium and dysprosium. What are they for? I'll tell you, because most people have no idea. These are not optional. These are essential for high-performance electric motors, cutting-edge medical imaging equipment, precision guidance systems for missiles, and the kind of radar that can see you from 100 miles away. You cannot just dig these out of any random mine in Australia or Brazil. You need an extremely complex, extremely expensive, extremely polluting refining process. And the truth is, Japan's high-end equipment has been able to compete globally for decades, largely because of these tiny amounts of rare earths. As they say in Chinese, without them, their products are second-rate, their cars become average, their weapons become outdated, their electronics become ordinary. Take Japan's most famous industry, cars, in mid-April. Top executives from Toyota, Honda, Nissan, I'm talking chairman level, president level, the big shots, they all rushed to Beijing for emergency talks. Why the rush? Why the panic? Because they checked their warehouses. They did the math. And they found that their inventory of battery-grade graphite, essential for EV batteries, had dropped to less than 20 days. 20 days, that's barely 3 weeks. If they couldn't make a deal, their export-focused production lines would have to hit the pause button. And let me tell you what happens when a major auto production line stops. The losses are astronomical. We're talking millions of dollars per hour. Suppliers go bankrupt, workers get sent home, the whole regional economy feels it. It's not just cars. Semiconductors, the core artery of the modern global economy. They're also in big trouble. Japan's top photoresist maker, Shin Etsu Chemical, has been forced to cut overseas orders because raw material supplies are drying up. And another company, Kanto Denka, makes tungsten hexafluoride. That's a specialty gas that is absolutely 100% necessary for advanced chip manufacturing. You cannot make a cutting-edge microprocessor without it. Well, they ran out of inventory. They literally sent warning letters to Samsung and SK Hynix in South Korea, 2 of the biggest chip makers on earth. And what was the subtext of those letters? Let me translate. I've got nothing left. UD better find another solution today because I can't help you anymore. Good luck. Now let's look at the civilian side because this affects real people. Not long ago, more than 2,500 hospitals across Japan, over 2,500 jointly, appealed to their health ministry for urgent help. Why? Because many disposable supplies for surgery, advanced syringes, and even some specialty drug ingredients are in full blown. Shortage, we're not talking about a delay, we're talking about shelves being empty. 1,500 medical institutions reported their inventories had hit exactly zero. Zero, nothing left. The Japanese government really panicked and rushed to distribute 50 million backup gloves. 50 million sounds like a lot, right? It covers half the gap, half. What about the other half? Nobody knows doctors and nurses are having to reuse supplies. That's where Japan is right now. What does this tell us? It tells us that Japan, a country with no strategic depth, no control over upstream resource pricing, and a dangerously narrow industrial base, is actually extremely passive, extremely fragile, and extremely vulnerable when facing a supply chain battle with a major power like mainland China. They spent years stockpiling. They thought they were smart. They thought they could ride out any storm. Now, in less than 6 months, they have almost eaten through everything. That is not strategy. That is wishful thinking. That is reality punching them in the face. At this point, some well-meaning person might ask, if Japan's civilian industries are suffering so much, why can't mainland China just sell to their civilian companies? Why not do them a favor? Be the bigger person. I'm telling you right now, that door cannot be opened. Once it's open, the consequences will never ever end. You cannot close Pandora's box once the lid is off. Why? Because Japan goes around begging for resources on the surface, saying it's to protect their economy, and for peaceful civilian use, saying it's only for factories and hospitals. But we all know what they're really doing. We are not 3-year-olds. We are not fools. Rare earths are the vitamins of modern industry, but they are also extremely sensitive, extremely critical, extremely dangerous dual-use materials. You sell it to them for civilian use today, and tomorrow, literally tomorrow, it will be inside a missile guidance system. Can you stop them? No. Can you track every gram? No. Can you trust the Japanese government, given what we know about their hidden stockpiles and their military ambitions? Absolutely not. Let's look at what Japan has been up to recently, not 10 years ago, not 5 years ago, but right now. In recent years, Japan has been heavily relying on heavy rare earths for 2 projects in particular. One is the Type 12 anti-ship missile. The other is the Type 25 island defense glide bomb. Sounds defensive, right? The names are carefully chosen to sound innocent, but here's the range on these upgraded systems, close to 1,000 kilometers. 1,000 kilometers, do you know how far that is? That's not defense. That's long-range strike, that's offensive. The high-precision guidance radar, the flight control systems, the inertial navigation components, every single one of those systems needs heavy rare earths. Not one is optional, not one can be replaced with something else, and it doesn't stop there. Now, Japan is not even trying to hide their intentions. Not long ago, they revised their defense equipment export rules. They legally opened the floodgates. And in practice, they have started handing out weapons to other countries. For example, selling frigates to the Philippines. And in early May of this year, just weeks ago, they actually went to the Philippines to test fire these kinds of attack-oriented weapons. What are they doing? They are expanding military influence. They are stirring up regional security. They are acting like a country that wants to project power, not defend its borders. But here's what really makes your blood run cold. I specifically looked up the public. Data from the International Atomic Energy Agency, that's the UN's authoritative agency on nuclear matters. The numbers do not lie. The IAEA data clearly shows that Japan has stockpiled 44.4 tons of plutonium. Let me say that again, 44.4 tons of plutonium. What does that mean in plain English? According to conservative estimates from nuclear experts, not alarmists, real experts, that material is enough to build several thousand nuclear warheads. Several thousand, not dozens, not hundreds. Several thousand. Japan could become a nuclear power almost overnight if they made the political decision to do so. Now, Japan likes to call itself a peaceful nation. They like to wrap themselves in their pacifist constitution. They like to say, we are different, we are peaceful. But with that massive pile of sensitive nuclear material sitting there, uninspected, unaccountable, unexplained, plus the right-wing political forces inside Japan screaming every single day to expand the defense budget, to revise Article 9, to build counterstrike capabilities. This is not a peaceful nation. This is a ticking time bomb buried right here in the Asia Pacific. Can you not be on guard? Can you not be suspicious? Of course, you have to be. Any American who doesn't see this as a threat isn't paying attention. So here's the big question. Facing this US-Japan double act, one asking for resources up front, the other providing political and military backup from behind, why is mainland China able to stand its ground without retreating a single step? Why can they weld that rare earth door shut, lock it, and throw away the key? Where does that confidence come from? What gives them the nerve to say no to the United States? Actually, it is pretty simple. In my aggressive, no BS opinion, there are two things. First, an irreplaceable, unbreakable technical moat that nobody else can cross. Second, impeccable, airtight legal logic that nobody can challenge. Let's start with the technical moat. Mainland China's biggest trump card is not that they have a lot of mines. Sure, mainland China controls about 70% of global rare earth production. That's a lot, but that is not the core. That is not the killer. The real killer, the thing that keeps their competitors awake at night, is that China controls more than 90% of global refining and processing capacity. 90%. And on top of that, they have a full set of separation and purification technologies that no one else on planet Earth can copy. Not the US, not Japan, not Germany, not Australia. Nobody. Japan has spent most of this past year trying everything under the sun. They are not stupid. They have gone looking for alternatives everywhere. Australia, India, Brazil, Canada, even Africa. And what have they found? Sure, those countries have mines, they have dirt, they have rocks, but they are basically just digging ore and shipping it. Raw ore without mainland China's complete industrial chain. It's useless, absolutely useless. You could pile all the ore in the world on Japan's doorstep, and they still could not turn it into the high purity materials needed for cutting edge weapons and semiconductors. Why? Because in high-end defense and precision semiconductors, the purity requirements are insane. We are talking about purity levels with multiple zeros after the decimal point 495969's purity. Do you think India can refine to that level with their current technology? Do you think Australia has the chemical engineering expertise? Not a chance. So having mines without the refining industrial chain equals zero. That is what we call a dimensionality reduction strike in industrial systems. You don't just compete with that. You don't just invest your way past that in a year or two. Even if the United States jumped in right now with unlimited money, unlimited political will, unlimited engineering talent, to build a complete rare earth processing line from scratch. Let me be brutally honest with you, without 10 to 15 years at minimum, without several $100 billion poured into the ground, without a massive environmental waiver, you wouldn't even see a ripple. China didn't build this capability overnight. They built it over decades. And now they are reaping the rewards. Now let's talk about legal logic, because this is where a lot of people get confused. Mainland China's tightening of rare earth exports is legally flawless. I want to be very clear about this doing compliance reviews on highly sensitive dual-use items. Materials that can be used for both civilian and military purposes is completely consistent with World Trade Organization rules. It is completely consistent with international security management practices. Every sovereign nation on Earth has the unquestionable, non-negotiable right to protect its core strategic resources and to guard against potential external risks. The United States does it, the European Union does it, Japan does it, and China does it to fulfill international non-proliferation obligations to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and advanced conventional weapons, carrying out strict licensing checks on sensitive materials. That could be diverted for military use. That is called fair. That is called reasonable. That is called lawful. You cannot argue against it. The initiative is firmly in China's hands. They hold the cards. They control the table. You want to buy rare earths? No problem. The door is open, but the condition is simple and transparent. You first provide ironclad, verifiable third-party proof that these materials will absolutely only be used for legitimate civilian companies. Let the IAEA inspect your facilities. Let independent auditors monitor your supply chain. Let the world see your books. But given Japan's current state, desperate to show its military muscles, desperate to develop long-range strike missiles, desperate to revise its pacifist constitution and expand its defense budget, would they dare to go public? Would they dare to open their warehouses to international inspectors? Would they dare to show the world their inventory records for plutonium and rare earths? Of course not. They are already nervous. They are already hiding things. They don't dare. And that is exactly why the door stays welded shut. Now let's talk about Japan's economic predicament, because I know a lot of you are following this and scratching your heads. If you've been watching the financial news, you are probably confused, really confused. On one hand, Japan's stock market is like a rocket ship. The Nikkei index just hit an all-time record high. breaking through 68,000 points, 68,000 just a few years ago. Nobody would have believed that. On the other hand, the Japanese yen has absolutely collapsed, blowing right through 160 yen to the US dollar, making it one of the weakest major currencies in the entire world. So what the hell is going on? Here's the truth that the mainstream financial media won't tell you. Japan's real economy and its financial markets have completely decoupled. They are doing their own separate things. They are not connected anymore. Why is the stock market up? I'll tell you exactly why. It's because the yen is weak. That's it. When the yen falls, Japanese multinational giants like Toyota, Sony, Nintendo, and Mitsubishi, companies that earn a huge percentage of their revenues overseas in dollars and euros, convert those foreign earnings back into yen at the end of each quarter. And when the yen is low, those converted profits jump artificially. It's an accounting trick. It's not real growth. It's a mirage. Then add to that the international hot money led by Warren Buffett, by the way, piling into what's called the yen carry trade. Here's how it works. You borrow yen at near zero interest rates. Japan's rates have been negative for years. Then you take that cheap yen, convert it into dollars, and buy higher yielding us assets like treasury bonds or tech stocks. You pocket the difference. This trade works beautifully as long as the yen stays weak and US rates stay higher. Plus, the Bank of Japan has been buying its own stock market ETFs for years. Direct market intervention to prop everything up. This is not a healthy market. This is a surface level, fragile, fake prosperity built on currency devaluation, foreign speculation, and central bank manipulation. It is bloated. It is artificial. And the only real winners in this party are foreign capital and the big Japanese, the zaibatsu, the old family controlled conglomerates. Ordinary Japanese people, not a chance. They get nothing. So what is life actually like for regular Japanese people? Let me give you some real livelihood numbers. This is real pain. I'm not making this up because of the import inflation caused by the crashing yen. Japan imports almost all of its energy and most of its food. A typical Japanese household earning about 5 million yen per year has seen its purchasing power drop from the equivalent of about $35,000 to around $28,000 over just 3 years. Let me put that in stark terms. That is a loss of roughly $7,000 of purchasing power in 3 years. Their nominal salaries did not drop, but their real salaries, what they can actually buy, crashed to regular. Cabbage that used to cost 100 yen now costs more than double, over 200 yen. A head of lettuce, cabbage, electricity bills, gas bills, gasoline at the pump, everything is up. Real consumer spending in Japan has been falling for months in a row. People are not spending because they cannot afford to. They are hunkering down, they are tightening belts. Now look at the Japanese government's finances, because this is where it gets truly terrifying. Japan is now carrying more than 1,340 trillion yen in national debt. Let me write that number in your brain, 1,340 trillion. That is trillion with a capital T. As a percentage of GDP, Japan's debt to GDP ratio is well over 200%, putting Japan solidly in first place among all developed economies by a huge, embarrassing margin. The United States has a high debt to GDP ratio, and we complain about it. Japan is in another universe to stop the yen from completely collapsing into the abyss. The Bank of Japan was recently forced to end its multi-year negative interest rate policy. They actually raised rates. But do they dare raise aggressively? Do they dare do what the Federal Reserve did? Absolutely not. No way. Why? Because if Japanese interest rates even get close to 1%, just 1%, the annual interest payments alone on that massive debt mountain would exceed 30 trillion yen per year. 30 trillion yen. Do you know what 30 trillion yen equals? It equals several years of Japan's entire defense budget combined. It equals a huge chunk of their social services budget. It would crush the Japanese government like a bug. So you have a deadlock, a cycle with no exit, raise rates too slowly, the yen keeps falling, import prices keep rising, people can't afford food, and public anger boils over into the streets. Raise rates too quickly. The government itself collapses under its own debt servicing costs, bankruptcy, default, chaos. And what are the Wall Street sharks doing while Japan twists in the wind? They are shorting the yen. They are cashing out at the top of the Nikkei. And then they are using those profits to buy up Japan's core assets for pennies on the dollar, good companies, good technology, good real estate, hotels, chip factories, patent portfolios, all bought up by foreign capital while Japan watches. Let me summarize where Japan stands right now in the clearest possible terms. On the top, they are being squeezed by the United States, their supposed ally, to implement $555 billion in investment to America. That is money leaving Japan, factories leaving Japan, jobs leaving Japan. We are hollowing out their high-end manufacturing base with a smile on our face. On the bottom, mainland China has them in a vice grip with absolute dominance over upstream raw materials. China controls the spigot, they can turn it on or off as they please, and in the middle, Japan has no strategic depth, no energy independence, no food security, and a debt bomb that could go off at any moment. And don't forget, I want you to really remember this. There is another huge financial time bomb ticking away. The Federal Reserve, the Fed's future monetary policy decisions, are completely outside Japan's control. Once the US starts cutting interest rates, or heaven forbid, if inflation picks up again and the Fed has to raise rates, the interest rate gap between the US and Japan will shift. And when that shift happens, the massive pile of yen borrowed for carry trades, hundreds of billions of dollars worth, will be unwound all at once. Hedge funds will not wait. They will not show mercy. They will hit the sell button simultaneously. At that moment, a capital stampede is not just possible, it is unavoidable, it will be overwhelming. Foreign investors will cash out and run for the exits at the same time. Stocks, bonds, and the yen will all come under pressure simultaneously, and that financial storm will roll over Japan like a tidal wave. It will not leave bones behind. All right, that is today's Full-Throated. No holds barred deep dive. I have broken down the entire logic from rare earths to military strategy, from civilian pain to financial collapse, piece by piece, layer by layer. If this gave you clarity, if this helped you understand why the US is begging, why Japan is panicking, and why China is laughing, then do me a favor, hit that like button, smash it, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single video. Every bit of your support is incredibly important to keeping me going, helping me track these global power shifts for you. I will see you in the next video. Stay sharp.